Hello everybody, welcome to IELTS Writing Task 2, 11 Steps to Band 9 Introductions. So do you want to see how a native with a degree from one of the top universities in the world thinks? I'll show you how to make 100% sure you've answered the question and get your marks. Learn how to avoid the pitfalls of responding to a question. So I see a lot of students who write good essays but don't answer the question properly and lose their marks. So step 1. What is the first thing you do when you see an essay question? Here's an essay question for you. So you read it, and then what do you do? Well, what you should do is read looking for keywords and then highlight them. Okay, that's an obvious step, but it's an important one, and I'll show you why. So there is our question. Step 2, what do you usually do next? You might want to pause the video and see what you come up with, see if you're doing the same way that I'm doing it. So my step 2 is to brainstorm. And when you brainstorm, what you're doing is coming up with ideas. So we'll ask some questions that will help us think about the details of the task. And we're asking questions about these key words. And I'll show you what these questions are. So pause the video and see what questions you can make about these, and I'll show you mine. So the first question is, who is not fit and active? Well, of course, they've said most people, but there's a lot of other questions connected to that, and I'll show you. Which country? So most people are not fit and active. Well, that's not really true in a place like Japan or many places in Italy. There's a lot of fit and healthy people. So this is a very sort of English-centric. What do you mean by fit? So what does fit mean? Fit and active. How do you determine what fit means? Is it 10 minutes of walking a day? Is it 20 minutes of walking a day? What is it? And whose standards? So who decides these things, what fit and active means? So already we have this question, but we don't know what the definition of fit and active means, and we don't know what country they're talking about in the question. So of course we can make it very general, which we will do. But it's good to think about these questions as a habit. It will help you ask these questions, will help you think about questions and come up with your ideas, which you'll see in a minute. So step 3 is answer the questions. So who is not fit and active? Kids in America? Or are you talking about England or Japan? Very different places with different situations. And which country do you mean? Elderly people in Japan are fit and healthy. And what do you mean by fit? To certain health standards? And based on what standards? In the UK? Or do you know of any you can talk about on the exam? You may not use all of these questions, but you'll certainly use them to form your idea. These questions help you think about the question and get your ideas. All right, let's take a look at step 4, search for your ideas. Now again, what would you do with this question? What kind of ideas would you have, and how do you know that you're on topic? So write down your ideas, pause the video, write down your ideas. You can put them in the comments, write them in the comments, and I'll take a look at them and we can talk about them. So the step 4 is searching for your ideas. Well, basically the question just says the causes of some people being unfit and the solutions. So, well, some people, it says most people are not as fit and active as they were in the past. Well, how fit and active were they in the past? I mean, there's so many questions. So really this is a bit, when I start reading it more, it's a bit of nonsense, actually, because it's far too broad, as they were in the past. I mean, is there any research for that? Where did they come up with this idea? So this is just a basic sentence to get you thinking about the topic. Really, the topic is, people not being fit and active. Now, your job is to talk about the causes and the solutions, which I'm going to show you how to do. So I'm thinking back to the kids and computers idea. It's proven by the elderly Japanese who don't use computers and are fit and active. So it's true that kids are using computers. That was my first thought on this essay. Kids use computers and they're not fit and active. And we can contrast them with Japanese people. But there's a problem with that, and I realized as I was doing the essay. And the problem is, it says most people, and I was focusing on kids, and actually I should be answering most people. So what I did on this essay, rather than saying like, here's a magic essay, I'm showing you the process that I'm going through to think of my answer. That's the most important thing, not just to see a good answer, but to understand how to do it. Now, that's why it's a good idea here. You can stop and write down your ideas for this and see how you go. Okay, so we need to develop these ideas into reasons or causes, right? So we have basic general ideas about computers and kids and who is fit and not active in what country. Now we need to think of proper reasons that answer this question. So it leads me, thinking about kids, to think about long school hours and a lack of playgrounds in cities. So long school hours is true, right? They have to work on computers, and there's not that many playgrounds or big parks in some cities. So is that a good answer? What do you think? So as you're watching the video, you can comment below and say what you think about it to this point. Do you think that's a good answer? And there's a problem with it, and I'll show you how I made it better. So the reasons might be different for middle-aged people, but the question says most people. So middle-aged people might have different reasons for not being fit. So we need to focus now on most people. So I shouldn't just focus on kids. So I've changed. And what I'm really looking for is a universal reason. Now, it's a really important point that I'm making here, because if I focus just on kids, maybe I would get a good mark for task achievement. That's 25% of the mark, right? There's 4 categories on the banding, and 25% of that 100% comes from answering the question and explaining it. So if I wasn't careful, if I didn't go back and say, are you sure this is, because this was the example I thought of. That's what happened in my thinking. I was like, oh yeah, kids, right? They're not fit and active. They play computers. But actually, when I went back and I'll go back a minute, double check the question. Where is it? It's a bit further on, sorry. So when I thought about the question again, I realized actually this is not just about kids. It should be a universal reason for being unfit, because it's most people. So if there's a reason that just kids have, then it's not good enough, and I could lose all my marks. So if I have a universal reason, which is what this is asking for, then I can get all my marks. So it's really super important. That's 25% of your marks, and it's not in the writing, it's not in the grammar, it's not in coherence and cohesion. It's just being very careful and going back and making sure that you have understood and answered all the parts of the question. Really, really super important, 25% of your mark. Because if the examiner sees that you haven't, immediately you're not getting a 7. So if I had done this, I spent all my money to go to the exam, I spent my money on teachers, I spent all my time watching YouTube videos, and I did this. If I didn't check that, I just lost my 7. And you see so many students who don't get a 7. They're like, I'm 6, I'm 6.5, but my reading is 7 and my reading is 8. What happened? This is what happened. And even myself, as a native speaker who has a master's from a really good university, has to be careful, because it's not about intelligence. It's about, in that short period of time you have to answer this question, you have to drill down and understand what are they asking you and not miss anything. Okay, that's why I did this just in a natural way. I made this PowerPoint step by step. And actually, as I was making this lesson, I was answering the questions step by step to show you how I do it. Okay, so this is a super big, super important point, right? So universal reason, let's find it. So can you think of some ideas? First of all, you can take a pause and think of some ideas and then come back. So TV, computers, diet, availability of cheap food. I'm thinking of the situation that kids and adults are in. I think if we get kids and adults, that's enough. We don't need to focus on elderly people or 30-year-olds or 40-year-olds. It's okay. So kids and adults are in the situation, and I connect them with sitting. That is the main thing I thought. I was thinking of adults and kids and TV and computers, and I thought, oh, what do? They sit. Both of them sit, so they're not fit. Does it match the question? Yeah. So good, I have one thing. So work and school demand that we sit. Now this came up in my head. This is not something I wrote. I wrote this down here for you to see. This is part of getting a really high mark because work and school demand that we sit. Work and school demand these things. So there's the cause. This is cause. This is 100% fully answers the question. That's the cause because we have no choice. Okay, both work and school, so we're covering kids and adults, right? Super clear, super slow. I'm going through this with you because that's 25% of your mark. Once you get this right, the rest of the essay is explaining it properly. That's it. It's just using good grammar, good vocabulary, and good organization, which I'll show you. It's in my course, really. But once you get this right, then you're on track to get a 7+. If you get this wrong, you will not get a 7+. This is a super strong word that connects with cause. So now I came to this. And on the exam, I think I would take a good 5 minutes. If you have to take longer, it's okay, because I can write fast. I'll show you that in a minute. So that's the reason for having unfit people. So we need one more. Now, I said money has been taken out of local community centers. Why local community centers? Because, again, both of them use them. Even older people use them. So that's an easy one to explain. It's an easy one to argue. We have 2 reasons why all of these people are unfit. Perfect. So now what would you do next? Here's the tip that I've been talking about. Physically writing the essay only takes 15 to 20 minutes. When you use the steps in this video, you're ensuring you don't make mistakes. These are actually good habits of writers and debaters all the time. They're always thinking of what they're saying. When you first use the steps, it will be slow, but later it will come naturally and you'll get your marks. Now there's more steps coming, so hang on, I'm going to show you the rest of the process, and I'm going to show you the introduction that I came up with. That's a band 9. So 25% of your mark comes from task achievements, answering the question. If you're off point, you lose. If you're off point, you're wasting your time and money, and this can make the difference. And not answering the question, again, is a huge turnoff for examiners. So let's go on to step 8. Next, you're going to double check the question. You're like, well, we've already spent so much time on the question. Why are we double checking it? You know why. Let's do it. So let's match them up. The question says, causes of not being fit and active. Work and school demand that we sit. That is a reason. Money has been taken out of community centers. That is a reason. Do we have the solutions? Oh, not yet. Well, let's have a think about it. See if you can come up with your own. Put them in the comments. Come up with your own solutions to them. I'll show you the ones I've done. So here we go. Here's the solutions. Create a pamphlet, which is a small piece of paper. Good for your vocabulary mark. Explaining how moderate exercise boosts learning. And we'll give it to the community. 2, create community groups around free activities like walking. There we go. Easy solutions, easy to explain, answers the question. Right. Now we're going to plan on a piece of paper. So on a piece of paper, you're going to write introduction, reason 1, reason 2. You're going to write, you can do this in short form. Work and school demands sitting. Write the solution. Same thing with the second point. That's going to be your second paragraph. And then you're going to have a conclusion, which just repeats these 2. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just double check that we have done this. So here is the introduction. Modern life demands high levels of sedentary work, or you could say long hours of sedentary work, and many people are not healthy and vigorous. You could say as a result, and as a result. This essay will examine the reasons why and suggest that. So the reasons why is the causes, and suggest that these are the solutions. Information in local groups can combat the problem. This is solutions. So out of this, you can use this structure. This essay will examine something and suggest something, right? This essay will examine something and suggest something. Okay, you can use these on your essays. And here we go. Here's pamphlet as information. And the reason I'm connecting these is because this is going to be the paragraph. And in the thesis, I'm telling the point of view or the causes that I will discuss, and I'm saying what the solutions are going to be. So the examiner, the reader, says, I know what the arguments are going to be. They want to know here, not way down in the end of the paragraph. They want to know right away, very clear. If you think about your fully answers the question, how does the examiner know you have fully answered the question? How do you know that? Do you know how the examiner knows? What do you think? So, if I tell the examiner here that my first solution is this, he knows right away or she knows right away that I am answering the question. The task said to give solutions. I'm giving this one solution and two solutions. So I'm making in this sentence it very obvious for the examiner that I have answered the question. I'm also, with this structure, telling the examiner, here's paragraph 1, here's paragraph 2. And the examiner will think, coherence and cohesion, organization, very good. Now all you need to do is in these paragraphs explain these things. Okay? So if you put those points here, information and local groups, the examiner knows the structure of your essay and doesn't have to find it, doesn't have to go searching around. Hey, where is the idea? I can't find it. The examiner goes, I see, good, thank you very much. Make it obvious for the examiner. This works. It works with all of my students, and examiners will love you for it. Here's groups. Boom, right there, paragraph 2. Okay? Now, step 11, we're going to double check with the band descriptors. And again, this is all stuff you can do at home and practice. And then on the exam, these will be in your mind and you'll know you're doing them. So let's see what it says. Fully addresses all parts of the task. And sorry, let me go back. Fully addresses all parts of the task. Really, I should have the question here and we should be checking the question. Double checking, always double checking. That's how you find your mistakes. But we've done enough, we know. We've done it. So on your exam, take a look at the question, take a look at your introduction before you write anything. Because here, if you say, oh no, I missed this point, I didn't talk about this point in the question, you can put it here. You can say further, da 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 da. Okay? So very important, you check that question, make sure all your points are there, make sure you're on point, you're doing what was asked, and you got a 9. That's already a 9 there. How many students I see that don't do this? Like 90% of students don't do this. 90% of students give me essays, they give me introductions, and I'm like, you're not focusing and answering on the question. And they don't see it. So the purpose of my course is I give you all this information on how to do all these things, the essay, top to bottom, every kind of essay. You can find the course on my website. I'll show you in a minute. It's also in the description. What I'm doing for you is you're writing something like this, and I'm telling you, you missed something. I'm looking for those holes, because those holes are costing you half a band, a full band. So I'm making sure you do what I do with you in the course is practice introductions. Because once this is done, the number one thing we do is practice introductions. Once this is done, this is the whole essay. This is the introduction. This is the first paragraph. This is the second paragraph. Conclusion repeats these two ideas. Done. So when you can get all the introductions done, you do lots and lots of practice on introductions on my course. 100% every time you're fully addressing the task. Boom, you've got a band 9 right off the top. So the next major thing, like in this intro, I'm teaching you on YouTube how to do this. But on my course, I'm teaching you how to get this part for doing this in your paragraph. Okay? That's the rest of getting a 9 or at least a 7+. and you just need to understand. You need someone to tell you how to adjust your writing to make sure you're doing this. Now, this works brilliantly with all my students. 99% of my students have gotten a 7+ first time because I teach them how to be good writers. And the big trick here is not writing a full essay every time, because I see students spending hours and hours writing full essays, full of mistakes, not answering the task, not having coherence and cohesion. And I'm like, with my students, I'm like, bang off these introductions so you can get them right. Make sure these do all of these things, they all match up. And I show you how to do all 4 bands, actually, is what I teach you in the introductions. How to hit all 4 bands. Okay? Super good course, super useful. I check all your essays for you, work with you very carefully. So head over to my website to check that out. Now here's the 11 steps. You can screenshot that. Okay, we don't have to go over that again. And thank you for watching. Comment below with your introduction, with your ideas. Like the video, subscribe for more in the series, hit the notification bell. I'm making more videos for you. Go to ispenglish.com for my IELTS course, ispenglish.com. Let's make sure you get a 7 the first time. Thank you very much.